morning. My name is Pastor Miranda. Like I said last week, if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I want to. I am our student ministers pastor at Real Life. And today I'm excited just to kind of continue to build off from what we talked about last week with how do we love others well during this weird season that we have found ourselves in the past few months. And how do we truly make this the best summer ever? Because again, like we talked about last week, it's kind of a weird summer. But man, it has still been such a good summer. So last week, what we talked about, do you guys remember? The woman in the alabaster jar? And we talked about how she gave God her best. She had a year's worth of wages, and she gave God her best because she wanted a moment with him to express how much she loved him. And then as a result of that, people started to challenge her and challenge what she was doing. And what happened? Jesus defended her. And as we continue to do that in our own lives, become closer and closer to God every single day, figure out what is the best, the very best that I can give God today in this season. When we do that, we grow closer to him, we become more like him, and we see people like he does, and we're able to love them more. Well, today I want to share, I shared this verse last week in my intro, and I want to share it again, Psalm 91, verse 1 to 2. And it says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, he is my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust." And again, I just want to take a moment to talk about when we truly take time to abide and just rest in his shadow, he speaks. We all of a sudden have an opportunity where we can hear him more clearly. And today I want to talk a little bit about dreams. Because here's the thing, a lot of times we dream about, okay, God, what do you want to do in the future? I think of especially those students in high school or in college, where you're spending all of this time preparing for whatever you feel like it is that God has called you to do, whether it's to be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, whatever that thing is, we spend time preparing for that. And the cool thing is when we have margin in our lives, like I mentioned last week, I found a new margin during this weird season of COVID. But when I have found time to have that margin, God has been speaking new dreams. Because here's the thing, I think dreams are like Legos. Who wants to play with one Lego? That's pretty boring. Where's Jackson Gilbert? Jackson, do you want to play with just one Lego? No. So I don't know if you can all see this, but I don't want to move it because I don't want to break it. Jackson brought this today for us to look at, and he built the Titanic. Jackson, did you do this with one Lego? No, there are so many Legos on this little ship right here, right? Tons of Legos. And I think that's what dreams are supposed to be like. They're supposed to be building blocks. Because here's the thing. It's almost my birthday, like I said last week. But there's a cool mark for me when it comes to my birthday. Right before my 22nd birthday is when I became a youth pastor. That was my dream. I wanted to be a youth pastor. I wanted to speak life into young people and see them find their potential in Christ and their identity in Christ. How many of you guys think that's where my dreaming was supposed to stop? I accomplished a dream. God helped me. I became a youth pastor. But I have a lot of life, even now, at 38. I have a lot of life ahead of me. And if I'm supposed to kind of stop dreaming, that is pretty boring. That is like playing with one Lego for a lot of years. But here's the thing. Something happens to us as we become older. We get into the routine of life. We get up and we do our thing. We go to work. We clean our house. We cook the meals. We take care of the kids. We drop them off at sports. We do all of these things. And life just kind of becomes this routine. And in the midst of that routine of playing with the one Lego, if we're not careful, we'll wake up one day and realize, where have the past 15 years of my life gone? Where has the past 5 years, where is the past year, where is the past week gone as I was focused on the one Lego and not thinking about what maybe God had for the future? When I look at a Lego, again, I look at this ship. This is pretty cool. If you handed me a bunch of Legos, Jackson, I could never do what you did. That's pretty sweet. But look at what he was able to create out of a bunch of little blocks. right? He created a really cool version of the Titanic. And I think if we let God continue to give us these building blocks and we continue to walk in those things, I think he can build a really cool masterpiece of our lives. But it's going to take more than the one Lego. The reality is, when I look around this room, I don't think that many of us are in the risk of ruining our lives, but we're maybe in the risk of wasting our lives by stopping in the process of dreaming for the future and getting stuck in the routines of life. So today, my first point is, God has called us to greater things. He has called us to greater things. In John 14, verse 12, it says, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do works that I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I'm going to the Father." Did you guys catch that? They will do even greater things than these. Even greater. But here's what happens to a lot of us. We get stuck in the routine of, I'm living my life and I'm doing good enough. I go to church, I volunteer, I love my neighbors, I reach out to people, I'm doing good enough. But here's the definition that I've kind of come to with good enough. If we define good enough, it can be defined as a baseline living mark of mediocrity, stuck in spiritual survival mode and compelled by complacency. That's good enough. I'm doing good enough. But in this verse, it says, they will do even greater. It doesn't say they will do good enough. They will do even greater works. What are greater works? It's a life-altering understanding that God is ready to accomplish a kind of greatness in your life that is entirely out of human reach. On our own, it is out of human reach. Beyond what you can see in yourself on your best days, but exactly what God has seen in you all along. Exactly what God has seen in you all along, the whole time. God has greater vision for our lives, and he wants to do really cool things through you. Another thing that can kind of stop us from pursuing those things are maybe focusing on the labels you were given when you were young. God has greater things for you than those labels. He has greater things than the cynicism we may be settling into his life when we get older. This one is tough, I think. He has greater things for us than time spent aimlessly wandering the internet and social media. Greater things, guys, than social media. There really is. He has greater things for us than the shame tethered to us like the sins of our past. Greater things. Greater things than empty success that brings no eternal reward. I think this is a big one. Greater things than the abuse you suffered at the hands of the people you once trusted. Greater things than that. Greater things than the torment you've been through in the trials of your life. Greater things than missed opportunities that we play on repeat in our minds. Greater things than the dreams we've maybe dreamed for ourselves on our own strength. And this is my favorite. Greater things than the greatest moment you've had thus far in life. He has greater. And the cool thing is when we start dreaming again and start striving for the greater in life that God has for us, he will give us a new confidence. He will give us new clarity. And he will give us the courage to do it. He's not just going to abandon us and say, here's this dream, figure it out. He's going to give us the courage, and he's going to be with us every step along the way. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at one of my favorite stories in the Bible, the story of Elisha. The story of Elisha is pretty sweet. He first appears to us in scriptures in 1 Kings 19:19. And here's the deal. When you're reading about Elisha at the beginning, there's nothing miraculous, nothing special. He's just a dude with a plow and a bunch of oxen. That's who he is. It says in 1 Kings 19:19 that he was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Plowing was back-breaking work. He probably was sweaty. He probably was stinky. He was probably really tired. And here's what his days probably looked like. Get up, get dressed, get the plow, drive the oxen, cough up some dust, eat some lunch, drive the oxen, cough up some more dust, get clean, eat dinner, go to bed, repeat. And that was his life. Every single day, he did those things. I don't know, does that sound boring to anyone else but me? Like, if you do it every single day, it would probably get really boring. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with hard work, because hard work is really important. Hard work is good. But it made me think about coffee, oddly enough. You guys know I like pickles. I confessed that to you last week if you didn't already know. I equally love coffee. I love coffee so much. I drink coffee every day. Coffee helps me love people better, is what I've always said, because it wakes me up. So coffee after Jesus equals loving people well for me sometimes. And I worked in the coffee shop industry for years, for 13 years. So between my own addiction, I'll call it what it is, my own addiction to coffee, and working in a coffee shop for 13 years, you guys, I have brewed a lot of gallons of coffee in my life. I've made a lot of lattes, a lot of mochas, a lot of cappuccinos, you name it, I probably made, I don't even know how many. And I was thinking about that even this morning as I got up. What's the first thing I did? Turned off my alarm clock, made my bed, hit brew, and instantly started drinking my coffee. But there was something in me, as much as I loved that job at the coffee shop because I got to talk to people, I just remember hitting this point where I'm like, this has been an amazing ministry opportunity to get to know my community, but it's time for something else. So I started looking for something else. Here is the cool thing about Elisha's story. He wasn't looking for a new job. He was simply doing the best with the life he assumed he'd been given. But God was watching Elisha, and God had something greater for him. A divine calling beyond his imagination. So here enters Elijah. Now I know it's confusing because their names sound the same, but they are different. Now enters Elijah. And God had told Elijah to appoint Elisha as his predecessor. So in obedience to that, Elijah headed to the field, and he found Elisha. You guys, it's confusing. And again, Elisha had no idea what was going to happen that day. But Elijah found him in what was like an ordinary situation in his life. What do you guys think he was doing? Plowing with the oxen. And something drastically changed in his life that day. His day took a drastic new direction. Our next point today is to become acutely aware of God's presence in your life. Okay, become acutely aware of God's presence in your life. In Psalm 139, 7-10, it says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to the heavens, you are there. If I make a bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise in the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast." So here's the thing. God's presence is with you no matter where you go. No matter what choices, no matter what is going on in your life, God's presence is with you. But the thing about God's presence is we have to become aware that it's there. He's never going to force himself on us. That God is a gentle God. So we need to become acutely aware of God's presence in our life. So as we continue on in the story of Elisha, in 1 Kings 19:19-20, it says, "Then Elijah passed by him and threw his mantle on him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, 'Please let me kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow you.'" Think about this moment, guys. Something that Elisha did every single day, right? He's out there with his oxen, pushing the plow, doing all the things that he did every single day. It doesn't say that he hesitated and said, "Okay, let me say goodbye to some people and I'll follow you." He ran. He left behind those things, he didn't hesitate to get out from behind the plow and run after what Elijah was doing and showing him. Here's what happens. Elisha goes on to slaughter his oxen, burns his plow. Okay, it all seems a little drastic. Like, couldn't you sell that? Couldn't you, hand it off to the family members that maybe want to continue the family business? No, he just set that thing on fire. He's like, we are done with this plow. Done. Just sets it on fire. But here is the thing. This story is not about how to manage family farm equipment, right? That's not what this story is about. This story is about pursuing what God put in front of him. So he pursued that, and he went for it. So the next thing we have to do is, yes, become acutely aware of God's presence, but sometimes we have to burn our own plows. What are the things in life that we hold so tightly to that maybe we need to burn so God can do something greater? And it's kind of the same as the woman in the alabaster jar. She gave it all. She didn't hesitate. She didn't think. She just said, here it is. I give it all. So it's kind of similar to that. And when I read some of these stories, sometimes I'm like, man, it's just insane. Like, he literally just set that thing on fire, right? He slaughtered the oxen, set it on fire. But here's what he was doing. Elisha was making a statement he was making a decisive break from his past. Very clear, very cut and dry, decisive break from his past, his old life, and everything that represented the stale stability and predictability of his life behind the plow. He wanted nothing to do with that life anymore. Here's the thing. I love this statement. I don't remember who said it. I can't take credit for it, but I love it. He was burning Clark Kent's coat and tie so he could wear Superman's cape. He didn't want to have even the smallest possibility that he would go back to that. So he burnt it and said, no, I am now wearing Superman's cape. So hear me out. I'm not saying go home and set your houses on fire. Please don't do that. I'm not saying go home and literally start things on fire. But maybe think about what are the things in your life that in order to really pursue the greatness and the dreams that God has for you, what are the things that are maybe keeping you back from that? What are the things that maybe are habits, or maybe it's even things you need to start doing? What are those things that need to change so that you can pursue God's greatness? You don't have to know all the things. You don't have to have taken all the right classes, have all the right books on your bookshelves. You don't have to have the right certificates and licensures. You already have all that you need to pursue what is greater that God has for you. You have those things. Really, all you need is a flamethrower, if we look at Elisha, to maybe set some things on fire so you can move forward. And here's the thing, this is a quote that I love. You cannot step into your new life until you first set fire to whatever is tethering you to your old life. So what are those things? What's tethering you to your old life? Before you can go forward, you first have to offer him everything, like we talked about last week. A lot of times I think we get stuck in two places. One, we don't think big enough. I think about this with students that I work with. God has such big things for you guys. And we talk about that a lot in youth group or on youth calls. Like, what is God birthing in you? What dreams? And you guys, a lot of times, this is a way you can be praying for students. They're not even sure. But how cool of a place are that they're in, because anything is an option. Anything is an option. And you guys, God has big things for you. So we want to start dreaming big. And then here's the other thing. Sometimes we don't start small enough as well. So that's a really hard balance to find, right? Dream big, start small. It's kind of confusing. But sometimes we'll dream so big, which is awesome, that we don't know where to start. And here's the thing. A big dream without small starts is nothing but a daydream. God's going to give us big dreams, but he's going to show us how to start out with the one Lego. Because again, if this is God's dream, Jackson, did you have to start with one Lego at the very beginning? Yeah, you couldn't just done, right? You had to start with one Lego. And that's what God is going to do in our lives. God initiates the biggest changes in our lives through the smallest starts. One Lego at a time. The next point that we have this morning is, what's in your house? What's in your house? If we continue on in Kings and we go up into 2 Kings 4, 1-7 says this. The wife of the man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead. You know that he revered the Lord, But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing at all," she said, "except a small jar of olive oil." Elisha said, "Go around and ask all of your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside, shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour the oil into the jars, and as each is filled, put it to the side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil, pay your debts. You and your sons can now live on what is left." How did this miracle start? Because this is a miracle, right? Like, she just kept filling those jars. How did it start? It started with something that seemed like nothing. And I don't know about you guys, sometimes my dreams maybe seem like it's not that big of a deal. But miracles can start out of something that seems like nothing. And lives can be changed out of something that maybe seems like nothing, if we're willing to keep dreaming. The widow realized that all she needed was all she had because of God. All she needed was all she had. And so many times, like this widow, we focus on what we don't have, or what class we haven't taken, or why we're not good enough. We come up with all the things, right? All the whys behind maybe why something isn't possible. Maybe it's our lack of resources or training or self-confidence or relationships. And here is the deal. The enemy likes to get us sidetracked and likes to make us feel like we don't have enough. But again, God can do a lot with a little. God can do so much with a little. I think about that in my life and how that has just been proven so true, because I grew up, you guys, in some really tough stuff. And if you would have told me when I was a kid, before I knew Jesus, that God had the plans he did for my life, that I'd be able to be a homeowner, and have an education, get the different things that God has helped me do, I would have said, there is no way, look at my genealogy. But God said, I can do it with just a little. If you're willing to dream, if you're willing to trust me, I can do it. And a lot of times we fall into the, well, if I had this, then I would. Or we fall into, if I could, then I would. But here's the deal. Just as the widow did, all we need to do is take inventory of our house. And God can find that one thing in the inventory of the house of our heart and build the Titanic. But it starts with the one thing. It starts with that one thing. So what I want us to think about, because here's the cool thing, as we talk about how do I love others well, I really believe the closer I get to Jesus, like I talked about last week, the closer you get to Jesus, the more you know his heart. The more you know the heart of Jesus, most likely those dreams he puts inside of you are going to be about other people, because that's his heartbeat, right? So I think the second step, at least for this journey that God has been on with myself, of how do I love others well? Yes, continue to fall more in love with him than I ever had before. And then keep dreaming, because he can do a lot with a little. So we're going to go into a worship song in just a moment. But I have 3 questions I want you guys to think about throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. The first one is, what do you want to see God do in your life? The second, what dreams do you have for your life? And the third is simply this: what's in your house? What's in your house? What is that thing that God is going to take and multiply beyond anything you ever expected? Because I guarantee it's there. For all of us, it's there. Why? Because God has called us to greater things. And this goes back to the same thing last week where we talked about no matter how much you've served the Lord, how much you love the Lord, there's always room for more, because God's love is just, we can't even begin to fathom how much is there for us, that love for us. It's the same with dreaming, guys. There's never a point in our lives where God is done with us. There's not. There's always people that he wants to reach through you. There's always things he wants to do through you if you keep dreaming. So don't stop. Let's pray. God, we thank you so much that you have called us to greater things. God, that's even so hard to comprehend, God, that you have called us to such greatness. But the amazing thing is, we don't have to figure it out on our own. You're there every step of the way, leading, guiding, directing, helping us dream. So I pray, God, that no matter where people are at this morning, whether it's in this room or watching at home online, God, that you would help us see, what is that next dream? What is that next thing? What is that next Lego in the masterpiece of our lives that you're building? And I pray, God, that we would pursue that thing like never before. And maybe, God, we don't know what that is. And if we don't, God, I pray that you would speak it to us, that you would show us what is that next dream. And God, that we would not get stuck in the routines and rhythms of life, but that we would allow you to continue to push us forward, that we would allow you to continue to give us new building blocks, new Legos for the things that you want to do in and through us. I pray, God, that you would speak to us in this time. In your name, amen.
Hey everyone, thank you so much again for inviting us into your home today. If you've been at Real Life for a while, or maybe today was your very first time, we want you to know that everyone has a place at God's table. Everyone has a purpose, and anyone can make a difference, even if we can't physically be together right now. So to take your next step at Real Life and discover how you can truly make a difference, we'd love for you to simply text Real Life to 31996, and that's going to send you a few links. I really encourage you to jump into our online community, but I also want to direct you to our Connect card. It just asks a few simple questions, and it's a really easy way for you to find out your next step. Maybe you're looking to get connected to our life group, maybe you're looking for a way to serve and become a part of our Real Life team, or maybe today you said yes to a relationship with Jesus and you're wondering, where do I go from here? We want to connect with you. That is so awesome. And whatever that next step looks like, we want to get you connected into our community and give you the tools to do something great. Well, that concludes our service. Thank you again so much for joining us for Church Online. We miss you, we're always praying for you, and we hope you have a great week.